Welcome to episode 96 of the Lowdown Radio Show presented by eBay Motors. I'm Neil Graham. Every traveler does it their own way. For Maria Schumacher, this week's guest, that means taking her time. Maria shares her story of how bumping into Sam Manicom, former guest of the show, changed the course of her life, and how recent travels in the U.S. stack up against traveling in her favorite country, Venezuela. She also shares common mistakes travelers habitually make. Number 4 is overestimating daily distances. I do that all the time. And she addresses one of the least discussed aspects of hitting the road, travel fatigue, and how if you don't know how to address it, it can cut your dreams off at the knees. And stick around at the end of the show where I'll review a product that deserves to have a second chance. But first, this message from eBay. The worst part about loving cars might just be buying them and all the parts. From Toyotas to Aston Martins, eBay has thousands of cars and the largest online selection of vehicle parts and accessories. eBay, things people love. Where did your motorcycle wanderings begin, or where did you get the inclination that you wanted to be a traveler?
Well, actually, it's quite a fun story. So my boyfriend had booked some tickets for the motorcycle show in London, the London XL show, which happens every Valentine's weekend. And he was going to go with his best mate. And then his best mate was told by his girlfriend that he was otherwise busy. So suddenly my boyfriend Aiden had a spare ticket and thought, okay, fine, let's take Maria. And until then, I'd never talked motorcycles. I'd never ridden, nothing, no interest. So he thought, oh God, she's never going to go on a date with me again. But I actually had a really good time. So we're wandering around the XL show, hopping onto bikes, checking it out. My boyfriend himself was only just, sort of considering possibly maybe riding a bike one day. And then suddenly we come across this guy, he's selling books. And we're like, what? Books at a motorcycle show? What's going on? And we're both avid readers. We love reading, so we had to go and check it out. And that guy was Sam Manicom. And he was there, and I don't know if you've ever spoken to him.
He's been a guest. He's been a guest on the podcast.
Right? Oh, right. Yeah, so he can speak so enthusiastically about his books. And so we got all excited. We got so excited we forgot to actually buy the book. So I actually went back online later and ordered the book. But on the train home, if you've ever been to London, the DLR is this rickety little sky train that feels like it's going to fall out of the sky. Yeah. So we're sitting on the DLR and we're sort of like, so do you want to travel around the world by motorcycle? And to my surprise, Aiden goes, yep. And that was it. That was the decision. So all of a sudden we had a plan for life, and we had to, learn to ride bikes and buy bikes and start saving money. And that's what got us into motorcycle. So it's all Sam's fault, really.
So you made this plan to travel. Where was your first destination? First, you had to learn how to ride, I presume. and then, so take it from that and take me through where your first journey was.
Yeah, well, we lived in London at the time, and I suppose, the way it works in England, you do a sort of one-day training, and then you get to ride around on a 125cc on a sort of learner's license. So that's really what I did, whereas Aiden did his full license straight away, and our first trip was 2 up because I didn't want to take the 125 to the Peak District. That was really interesting. I was so scared on the back of the bike that I was sitting there clinging on, and at our first break, when it was time to climb off, I was so stiff I actually literally fell off the bike and landed in the car park. So that was my start.
Very elegant. In your defense, it is pretty terrifying to be a passenger on a motorcycle. The last time I did it was probably 10 years ago, and it was horrifying.
I find it gets worse once you actually know how to do it yourself.
Yeah, it's true. It's true because you start to challenge, you start to question the at least in my case, even though the rider was extremely good, a better rider than I am, I still thought, okay, what if he's not paying attention?
Yeah, no, it's the same with me. The way Aiden rides, he is a better rider, but the way he rides just freaks me out, and somehow the leaning seems so much further when you're in the back than when you're at the front. In London, you're allowed to filter between traffic as well, and just from the angle where you sit at the back, it just seems a lot tighter than it actually is as well. So it was scary, But yeah, and then basically we ended up, well, we planned this, so we rode around a lot and ended up doing a test ride to a wedding in Portugal. So conveniently, friends of ours who were Portuguese but lived in London got married in Portugal, and we're like, okay, this is perfect. This is going to be our test ride. So by that time, we'd done our licenses. We'd bought the F650 GS each that we were going to take, all the gear, and just literally pointed our bikes south until we got to the wedding, just to see how it all went. And it was so brilliant. We were hooked, totally hooked.
And Portugal is a real gem to ride in, isn't it?
Yeah, and the Pyrenees, crossing the Pyrenees from France into Spain, and it's wonderful. We only had, gosh, I think it was we coaxed 3 weeks out of them. We only got 2 weeks holiday, but we coaxed 3 weeks out of them, so we didn't have too much time to sort of wrap around, but we made it. It was the best thing ever.
So I presume that the hook had been set in terms of more travel to come.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We were convinced that was it, and we actually set off too early. We didn't save for long enough, but we got impatient, and so we just set off a year later. And basically just the idea was to go all the way around the world. And first stretch, we're going to go as far as we could overland towards Australia, and I think planned to fly across from Singapore. So that was sort of the first leg of the journey.
One thing that I always find curious is how people incorporate this notion of taking months or years away to travel, and how you fund it. And it's not just about dollars and cents or euros. It's about how do you change your life to accommodate something as sort of drastic as doing this. And I'd like to know, in your case, how did you do it? How did you figure out how to fund it? Well, to this day, I guess, how do you make it work?
I'm the worst person to ask about the funds, because we still haven't gone around the world. The funding was our downfall. But yeah, the way it started was it was really depressing at the time. I mean, it was London, so it was the British pound, and I'd finished university with a huge debt. Aidan was finishing university because he did a master's with a huge debt. And the depressing thing was I studied accountant. I had become an accountant. And even with that sort of career trajectory, if I wanted to stay in London to retain that income and then buy a property, I was going to be paying that off until retirement, really. And that was really depressing. And that was without buying, anything fancy or having any kids to finance or anything like that. So that was really depressing. That was not an outlook in life that I enjoyed. And I had always wanted to travel, but I made the mistake of starting work before I finished university. So I sort of wasted that natural gap to do stuff that you have there. But really, I didn't have any money to travel with anyway. So all of my sort of ideas of gap years and stuff like that, just no money. So yeah, all of that was just really depressing. And I suppose I was kind of ready. So when we met Sam, that enthusiasm, all that really did was sort of dig up those desires to travel again and just light the fire, really. And then we were like, just stubborn. It was like, fine, we'll just live really poor and we will save as hard as we can, and we'll ignore the student loan, which you can in Britain to an extent. They just take it out of your wages once you earn enough. So it's not something I needed to pay off before we left. And just save. So we moved further out of London to save a bit on the money there. We ended up doing silly things like, instead of going to the pub, we'll just carry a can of beer and go for a wander around town. And I think we started upcycling chairs to try and sell on eBay. We sold everything we had. At the time, there was this cool thing, listings for 99 cents were free. So I was selling literally spare shoelaces for 99 cents. It was ridiculous what we did. I grew plants from seed, like, we're eating a bell pepper, and I would take the seeds out of it and then grow the plant and then sell the plant. And it was completely ridiculous. And to be honest, we didn't make a whole lot of money. We didn't have nearly enough. But eventually it was just like, well, let's just go. And so we did. We set off, and no, we didn't have enough money.
The cars you'll find on eBay are just different. They come with a story that you can't wait to share. Maybe it's the car's history or the story of how you found it. Like this 1973 Dodge Charger on eBay that had been tucked away in an Arizona barn for over 40 years, only 55,000 miles, and somehow in great running order. It even has a rare sunroof. Suddenly, a car that was hidden for decades is uncovered on eBay and ready to be delivered straight to your driveway, thanks to eBay's Secure Purchase, the new seamless and secure way to buy your next car. In just a few clicks, the title and DMV paperwork is all handled for you. There are thousands of cars like this on eBay, from rare finds like the Pontiac Grand Prix SJ to unique builds to your next daily driver, and now a seamless way to buy them. eBay, things people love. There's a lot of people that are very hesitant to travel places, and which is really interesting because when you talk to travelers, they generally tell you a very different story than those who are reticent to do these things. But I'd like to hear your story. You went from Vancouver in Western Canada and you went down through the US, and this is a fairly recent trip. Tell me how far you went and let's start off with your experiences in the US, because we heard a lot of things about people at the border, them being, very suspicious of foreigners. What was your experience?
Yeah, so I guess when we went, it wasn't quite as dramatic as I'm experiencing it now. And we had, to be honest, if you live in Vancouver, the next town is Seattle. So if you're ever doing anything out of town in another town, so we had crossed a lot into Seattle. My partner's brother had moved to Portland. So we would visit him a lot. And we ended up basically just crossing a lot, and this was no different. We ended up crossing, and we actually stayed in Portland to visit him, sort of a hi goodbye kind of thing. And after that, really, the US trip started. The one significant thing was, as I have a European passport, and with that I need an ESTA, and I get a 90-day stamp to cross the US, and the rules are poised to change. I don't know if they will, but at the time, getting the ESTA was really easy. But what I'd gone and done is I got myself a brand new passport to have lots of free pages and extend the date. And I didn't realize the passport is attached, the ESTA is attached to the passport, not the person. So we arrived at the border, and they were like, "You don't have an ESTA?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." And they're like, "Not on this passport." Oh, crap. And it was literally the last day that you could walk into the office and fill out the form instead of doing it all in advance online.
Oh, really?
And so then once I'd done that, and then once I'd done that, I was like, "So now I have an ESTA?" And they're like, yeah, you do. Okay. So we crossed into the US. I had my 90 days. And the ESTA thing becomes significant when we're trying to leave. But yeah, like after Portland, really, I guess obviously the Pacific Coast is perhaps politically a little sort of more open towards visitors, but we did go into sort of the center a bit, the Utah and the canyons and that kind of stuff. And it's the world over. If you don't visit a country because of the politics, then you can't go anywhere really, because whoever agrees with politics. So it's really more just the people that you meet, and the people were just friendly as usual. I actually like people in the US because, unlike Canada, they're not worried about saying hello to a stranger. It's not a weird thing to do. It's a nice thing to do. So the amount of people that just come up, talk to us, of course, the bike's a conversation starter. And yeah, did we have everything we needed? Oh, hey, there's a cool place to camp here. Have you heard of that place? And just really, really nice people. And in those kinds of conversations, politics are irrelevant. You don't discuss politics unless you know someone well. At least that's my kind of rule for traveling, because, everyone has different opinions, and that's okay. So, I wouldn't want them to change my opinion. Why would I try and change theirs? And I mean, it did become kind of obvious. Some parts of the country, I could suddenly see how they voted for who they voted for. But again, like, I don't know, that's not what I'm there to see. I'm there to meet the people, and they're all good-hearted people. They're all welcoming, and I didn't have a single bad experience there, really. And then, yeah, I mean, we did dash through the US just because for financial reasons. It's just expensive. And the idea back then was, well, we live in Canada, we can pop back anytime. That might now change because of the new ESTA rules, but in the meantime.
Right.
And then, yeah, we did cross into Mexico, and this is where the ESTA thing becomes funny. I did something very silly. So we crossed, and from the Canadian border, we were used to being stopped at some stage. We crossed at Tijuana into Baja, and we're just, here's a green light, there's an open barrier, and we're waiting for the bit where the guy stops us and wants to see the passport. And we're going past the area where your stuff gets searched, and they waved us through, and all of a sudden, we're all the way through, everyone starts speeding up and says, welcome to Tijuana. And we're like, oh crap, we need the paperwork. And so you are allowed into the Baja Peninsula without any temporary import document. But we had researched this, that when you want to cross on the ferry to mainland Mexico, down there, they check your paperwork and you must have the temporary import document. If you don't have it, they don't issue it there. You must go all the way back north.
Yeah.
So suddenly we're in Tijuana and we're like, now what? And we actually pulled over, and Aiden didn't see a hole, like a missing manhole, and bumped over it with the front wheel, and then was stuck with the thing behind his wheels. And now that he had no momentum left, he had to ride through the thing, but he was going to drop in. So we were stuck on the side of the road about to fall into a hole. And
oh, geez.
Fun, like trying to drag him off it. He couldn't put his foot down because there was a hole, and it was funny. But yeah, and so
although I'm guessing not funny at the time, but funny in retrospect.
No, that's definitely type 2 fun, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did get him out, and then we're like, well, we need to go back because we need to do this. So we thought, okay, we'll park the bikes in a car park and walk back, and spent hours trying to get back to this customs place. Couldn't get back to it. So in the end, we went back to the queue, and from the other side, the queue is massive, and they won't let you in. And so we did what the other bikes did and just went around the side. And then we got to the front and we realized it's the fast lane. What do you call it? I think for us, it's the Nexus, and going the other way, there's
Nexus,
similar. Yeah. We didn't have that. But now we're at the front of the queue, and the woman was really annoyed. And she's like, well, do you have an ESTA? And I was like, yeah, I've got an ESTA. She's like, fine, just go through. And then we get to the next guy, and the next guy, Aiden with his Canadian passport, he was just allowed through. And then he looks at me like, you don't have an ESTA. I was like, I swear I just got one like 3 months ago. And he's like, no, you don't have an ESTA. And I'm like, oh God. So then I was like, well, what do I do? And he's like, well, you have to go to the search area, but your partner can't come with you. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere with my partner, because I knew my phone reception, I didn't have any phone reception, and we'd lose each other. And so I was just like, I'm not going anywhere. I just sat there. I was like, I'm not riding anywhere without my partner. And I don't know what it is, but I suppose maybe because I'm a woman, poor woman, can't leave her alone. Finally, that sort of trump card let me through and let Aiden come with me.
Right.
So then we're in the search area, and these very strict American people officers were sort of making me wait, and they're chatting away to Aiden because he has the passport and it's fine. And I was treated like, and my yellow sticker that you get, normally it tells them search for drugs or search the bike it just said no ESTA. And so the guy starts searching my stuff anyway. And he broke some of course, we're loaded up with all our stuff, and he broke a couple of zippers, and then he was like, oh, I better not carry on. So he stopped searching. So if you ever don't want to be searched, just make sure your stuff breaks as they're doing it, and they'll stop. And then he was like, so why do you want to go into the country? I'm like, I've just come from there. All I need to do is get to the aduana, at the entrance on the Mexican side. So he's like, you don't actually want to go to the US? I was like, no, not really. I don't. And it was so confusing.
So is this comical sequence of missteps?
Yeah. And he just didn't know what to do with me because he wasn't allowed to let me in without Nesta. And what had ended up happening is I got my 99-day stamp, but they well, they said it was an ester, but it wasn't. I still didn't have an ester, which you now had to do online. So while the guy is trying to decide what to do with me, I'm there on my phone with sporadic reception trying to get my online ester. Because at the time it was a really quick process for $10, not like now where it's forms and forms and forms for $40. Anyway. And so in the end, he's like, fine, you follow me. And he brought me, this is the first time I've ever been there. He brought me to the gate where you get sent when you're not allowed to cross the border, which is like the back gate back into Mexico. And I was like, oh, perfect. I don't even want to go to the US and do it all again. Really, I just want to go back to. So yeah, and then we're sitting outside the gate and the gate won't open. And the guy has no idea why, and it won't open. And we get suspicious. It's because it's weight activated and 2 motorcycles just weren't heavy enough.
Oh,
geez. So he just told us, you sit there until the gate opens. So I was like, okay, fine. And I'm still on my phone applying for my ester, and eventually it comes through and I'm like, now I have an ester. But we sat at this gate. And eventually this car comes by, this old sedan loaded full of Mexican people, and they've got the windows down and they're leaning out the window looking at us going like, why are these gringos? And why weren't you allowed across the border? And that minute the gate opens because the car is heavy and we're like, oh shit, we gotta go. Didn't give an explanation, crossed through. And now we've got all this traffic flying past. Remember all the open barriers, all the open gates, everyone's flying past. And we're like, we got to cross like 20 lanes of this, and we saw the aduana on the other side. We almost missed it again. And yeah, the reason we missed it is because it says something to declare. There's no hint to tell you that's where the office is, where you need to get your paperwork. But yeah, we crossed through, made it, and eventually got our paperwork. But yeah, it was ridiculous. We spent the whole day doing this circus.
Well, let's jump to something that you write about. We're not going to follow a linear path in your travels, because what you talked about there really reminded me of something you read about on your website. One of the things is travel fatigue. And this is something you don't hear travelers talk a lot about. And I think any of us who've traveled, we don't have to travel around the world. There are just those days when you just kind of like to be home or anywhere else.
Yeah.
And you write about this experience where and travel is, and for me, I know that sometimes I've been somewhere, I don't speak the language, I'm exhausted. You're dealing with shit back home, and you just want to sit down and order some food, and everything is just an ordeal. And you talk about this, and what have your experiences been with that, and how have you overcome that on your travels?
Yeah, so I suppose I never read about it before, and I had to learn it really. I learned to recognize it, I guess, is the thing. Especially beginning of our travels, we just plowed on. We're super enthusiastic. Everything is new. Everything is fun. It even took, Aiden and I hardly ever have arguments, but it took having a couple of arguments for us to sort of recognize it. And really, it's just you go to these amazing places, like just stuff that when you see it on Instagram or something, you're like, wow, I hope I can go there one time in my life. And you're there and you're like, meh, not interested. You don't even bother taking photos. You don't really want to go wander around, and sort of, that's just weird. You're having this adventure of a lifetime, and everyone at home would totally tell you off. And that's sort of when you recognize it. And I don't know, I can't remember when the first time was. We had it more in India. India is very exhausting, as amazing as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I suppose over time we learned that it's okay to just leave the tent pitched and curl up in the tent and not come out despite the best sunshine, and just feel sorry for yourself and watch some stupid series that you've downloaded and carried around on your laptop, and just do that. And at first we used to think this is ridiculous, but after a while we sort of realized that's actually what you need to do. You need to have a break. And for everyone that's different. For me, it's different at times. Sometimes I get travel fatigue after 3 days. Sometimes I can go for weeks without noticing that it's happening, or, it's just, yeah, I think the trick is to recognize it and to sort of forgive yourself to take a break and do things that people at home would say, why are you doing that? Why are you being a couch potato? Why are you not moving? It's okay to do that. And then you'll notice, just let yourself do it. And then before you know it, like suddenly you've got itchy feet and it's time to go. but then at least you enjoy it again. And I think that's the magic trick to it, really.
I sometimes think it's almost an urge to blend into wherever you are. You know, I know in my experience, sometimes you get tired of moving through, and you just want to settle down for a little bit. It can be a couple of days, even. Just, you know, you see a coffee shop and a beach, or you think, well, I just like to go between those, you know, for a few days, and just to feel you're part of it. And then, as you say, you get that urge returns. And I'm still stunned at how rarely it's discussed. But as you say, I think sometimes we just hit a wall. We just can't take anything new in. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think we get that in our normal life as well. It's, you know, when people get burnt out at their job, it's always go, 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 and you don't allow yourself to stop. And it's the same traveling. It's just information overload. Like you say, possibly a language you don't speak, communication is difficult, everything is difficult. And you spend so much time outside your comfort zone. I mean, your comfort zone grows the more time you spend outside of it, but
Yes.
it's just, yeah, it's exhausting to constantly be learning, to constantly be making things happen, do things you've never done before. I mean, even just a ride from home all day, you know, even just riding all day is exhausting. So add all the rest to it, that can get quite exhausting. But I think what you touched on there, wanting to stop somewhere for a while, I've actually learned with time that's a more, at least for me, a more favorite way to travel, because it's one thing to sort of breeze through, stay somewhere for a night, carry on kind of thing. And sure, that's an experience and one worth having. But I found that to really sort of get under the skin of a place, that only really happened. And again, we learned that by sort of accidentally doing it and then realizing it is when you really stay somewhere, and maybe you do take a travel break because you have travel fatigue, or Aiden sometimes worked from the road, which meant we needed internet for a couple of days, or silly things like, you know what, my clothes needs washing. I need to stay at a hotel. Oh, it's nicest. Let's stay for 3 days. And just, you know, leaving from the same door or the same spot every day, seeing the same people, maybe going to that same favorite cafe on the beach, you start sort of looking around and taking the time to observe. And that's when you sort of get an inkling of what life really is like in that spot. And you have a whole, I suppose you really experience the place much more and learn much more about it than if you sort of came and went. And I've started really enjoying that, to the extent that Aiden now tells me, hey, can we go, please? We need to, like, if you want to write about experiences, you need to have them. And I'm the kind of, I'll be like, no, 3 more days and then we can go.
You can refer to them as stationary experiences. How's that from now on?
Good call. Yeah, thank you. I will do.
There's a lovely little thing on your website that I'd like you to talk about too, which is 10 common mistakes motor travelers make. And I won't make you remember the 10 off the top of your head.
I was going to say, remind me which ones they were.
Yes. First one is that you don't need a plan. The misconception that you don't need a plan.
Yes. Well,
and you're saying you do.
Well, you need a plan just so that you can not follow it, that you can dismiss it.
Yes.
Yeah, like, I suppose we kind of did that from the start. Like what I said about the trip to Portugal, the test trip. We really only just planned to be there for the wedding. So we had to be there at a certain date. And really the plan was head south until we get there. So that's a very loose plan. We didn't plan the routes. We didn't plan anything to see on the way, to the extent that we didn't realize you can't buy food on a Sunday in certain places. And we actually had to stop another biker and go, hey, where can we get food today? Which was an experience in itself. But yeah, really, I don't know, like if you have everyone I've ever met who had a solid plan and wanted to really stick to it, they were just so stressed trying to make that happen.
Well, your second point is over preparing. So there's this, I guess what you're saying is there's kind of this sweet spot where you make a plan, but you're going to deviate from it, and you kind of accept that that's going to be what holds it.
Make enough of a plan to be free, I think. So, make enough of a plan in terms of, well, have a ballpark idea of how much money you're going to need, have a ballpark idea of where you're going. Maybe know that if things go wrong in this country and you go there, that your visa, you can get a visa for the country next door instead, or, because roads get closed, political things happen, suddenly you can't go where you thought you could go. Have the sort of securities, have spare cash to get out of there if you must. Know that whatever bike you have, you're either comfortable repairing and you have the parts and the tools, or you have a credit card and you'll be in places where you can pay someone to do it. Just sort of loose stuff like that, just enough to sort of have the security to be free to deal with anything that the trip that throws at you, really is, I suppose, the sort of, like, that's how I travel now that I have the experience. It's just like, just have enough to be free, really.
And there's a paradox, isn't there? There's a paradox, I think, where a certain degree of planning, I think it's with almost anything, though, a certain degree of planning means that you're not perpetually burning up energy just to take care of the basics. You're not spending hours and hours trying to figure out where to find fuel or food.
Yeah. I guess we obviously made the loose plan, like the Argentina trip was like, okay, let's get from Canada to Ushuaia, and if we have money to turn back and ride north, great. We knew where we could ship the bikes home from. We knew we had to cross the Darien Gap. We knew what our visa import document requirements were for all the countries on the way. We had a loose budget, and again, we did the thing was like, well, this is what we've got. Let's go. Let's make it right.
Yeah.
And then really just because, there's no point planning now about the political situation in Bolivia. It's going to change anyway. And then what we would do just before we would cross the border into the next country, we would get the map out and be like, okay, what's cool in this country? And we don't go to too many touristy things, but the Lagunas route was a dream. The Salt Flats was a dream. So when we headed to Bolivia, we're like, okay, that we have to do. And so we'll pick a couple of points, and that then sort of designs the route. Again, a loose route.
Mm-hmm.
Every morning we'd wake up and go, what looks squiggliest and most fun? Let's go that way.
Yeah.
But then, that's also when you sort of find out, okay, it's tough to get fuel in Bolivia. How do people handle this? Or this area is so remote, I don't have the range in the tank, so I better start riding around with my canisters full, or those kinds of things. But that really, we would sort of plan that just before. And again, just knowing we're in a remote area and I've filled my canisters, I feel safe wrapping around that remote area. Also knowing, okay, I've drawn enough cash, so if no one takes credit card, we have enough for the next 3 days in this remote area. Cool, let's head in and see what we find. But we don't need to plan the exact route. We don't need to, we have the freedom. We've prepared enough to have the freedom to figure it out when we get there.
The Lowdown Show is presented by adbrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. A couple of other things that you talked about, and I think these are two things I know that I'm guilty of, and this can be just riding from home for an afternoon, which is overpacking and overestimating the distance you can travel in a day. And I don't think there's a motorcyclist out there who isn't nodding their head at those ones. It just seems to be what we do. And let's start with the distances. You talked about waking up and thinking that, let's find the squiggly lines, and you kind of forget that the squiggly road doesn't add 15 minutes to your journey. It triples it. Yeah. Versus, some sort of throughway if a throughway is available. So, how do you, the only thing I've ever figured out that works is you have exceedingly modest daily expectations, almost laughably modest. And then if you meet them, great. If not, well, then they weren't modest enough.
I think for me, the trick there is to really allow myself time. Even just riding a 250, that's always overloaded for a 250. I've just learned that I just take longer. And if I have a deadline, like when I go to the Horizons Unlimited meeting here in Cannes West, yeah, you can probably knock that out in a day, but I never do. I take several days, I take an extra day. What if I have a breakdown? What if something happens? Just to give me the time to get there. And I think, again, that's the sort of, it gives you the freedom. If that squiggly road turned up so awful that you literally did 3 kilometers in a day,
Yeah.
then cool, you had heaps of days. So allowing yourself the time is really the trick. And also knowing that, let's say you do have to reach a border because of visa restrictions or something, well, then maybe don't take that squiggly line, take the highway. And yeah, the distances, when you're on a big, long journey, you sort of, I suppose, you go from day to day and you learn quite quickly how things are in that country. So your estimations of how long something might take you get better, but that's not to say there can't be a surprise. Surprises always happen. And yeah, it just goes back to making sure you have enough water, enough fuel. Uh, we learned that the hard way in the outback in Australia.
Is this your dehydration story?
Yeah, that's the when we didn't have enough water to even wash our hands or anything. It was interesting.
And that's what, and of course, the thing with dehydration, if anyone is, I'm sure many have, but for those who haven't, it's not just that you're thirsty, it's that your brain ceases to work. That's the thing, isn't it? As you take a
Yeah.
drink, it just, you can't figure out which way's up.
Yeah, we never got ourselves that badly into it. But yeah, we knew we were risking it with very little water, and we wanted those photos in the morning. And the first day, the sunrise didn't happen because it was cloudy, so we waited another day without enough water. And our genius plan was, well, we'll just really be careful, and we used the rice water to cook the coffee in the morning, didn't waste it, and that kind of stuff. But then, of course, as soon as we set off, we had a breakdown. And that's when we realized you don't count your water in hours in terms of, I only need to make this last for the rest of the day. You count it in kilometers, because if it takes you 2 days to get to where there's water, then you need it to last for 2 days. So that became very interesting. And we rationed our last sips literally by the mileage.
One of the things that every traveler that I've ever spoken to is the perpetual question is your favorite country. And it's kind of, I know it's a silly question because, of course, every country has their merits, and even places you don't particularly enjoy can be, in retrospect, really be the most vivid. And you talked about India. In India, I've been to India, and it's a difficult place, but it's also incredibly rewarding. It's the duality of it. But one of your favorites that you mentioned is Venezuela, a country that's been in the news of late.
Yes.
So tell me about Venezuela as a motorcyclist.
Oh my goodness, you never get to anywhere. Like, talk of daily distances. And the reason isn't anything to do with you. It's because everyone stops you to talk to you, to join you up to the motorcyclist, help everybody WhatsApp group, to offer you coffee. Do you want to have lunch? Shall I take you somewhere nice? You just have to be ready to just be taken for a ride, literally, in the best kind of way, and just go with the flow, because people are so nice and so welcoming. It's amazing.
Interesting, because we hear so much about Venezuela now, and I'm sure many, especially Americans listening, would be very wary to travel to Venezuela. But that's interesting that and even compared to other countries, you found Venezuela was just, there's something different about it.
Yeah, it's funny. We got to Colombia and thought, wow, these people are nice. Can't get any nicer. And then we popped across to Venezuela, and there we are. They're even nicer. It's absolutely amazing. It's really, really fascinating. It's the only country in the world where nobody ever came to beg anything of me. And they are literally one of the most, I suppose, destitute countries I've ever traveled to. I mean, obviously India has the disparity, but Venezuela, it's across the board almost. One of the shocking things that I sort of noticed by the by is, like, gosh, the people here are really skinny. So I thought that can't be right, and I Googled it. And that's because of the way the country has been for so long before a certain state came knocking on their door. is that people are always hungry. And when you get there, there is a sort of, well, we're all in it together. No point one begging off the other. Sort of just let's make it work kind of feeling. And the only time I've ever seen anyone ask for anything would be, you'd be in a restaurant and suddenly this person would come by and would very politely ask at the counter whether they had anything leftovers or anything to help them get through the day. And the only way they would ask, it's not like, the restaurant gives one person, suddenly everybody's queuing out the door like it would happen here for freebies. It's like, if this person really was going to be hungry and couldn't make it, they would kindly, politely ask, and they would get a little bit, and they would only ask if they absolutely had to. And the whole country sort of just worked that way. And whatever
Amazing.
we needed, they'd always help us out with everything and make it happen. They're just, amazing.
What did that make you think of? Those of us in the West, the decadent West, the notion of Western privilege. How it certainly must have given you lots to chew on.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously such a hard kind of topic. It's a little bit like, it's almost like well, as far as you can't do anything about it, it's almost worth not thinking about. A bit like when you're riding a motorcycle, you can't be sitting there thinking how dangerous it is and how you're going to crash and die. All you can do really is just, be the kindest, be the most giving, share in it all, and wish them good luck. Like, I wish I could feed them all, but it's tough. It's really tough to see.
You had a really lovely comment on traveling in India since I mentioned that. And I remember going to being dragged to the Taj Mahal and being photographed. And next thing I knew, I had 15 Indians or 35 Indians around me, and everyone was taking selfies. And there was a pond that I just wanted to dive into just to make it over, because I was, it was hot and I was just kind of cranky. And you talked about retreating to tourist areas just where people were used to seeing white folks, just because that crush of humanity was just exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, India. Just talk to me about India just a few minutes. I mean, it is really. This is bizarre. I ask you a question, then I keep talking. But I actually always wanted to ride in New Delhi, and I did it, and it was the most insane experience. Just with a city of 42 million people, essentially the population of Canada, in a city.
There you go, yeah.
And but what was it about India? What were the rewards and the challenges of India?
Oh goodness. I mean, India, it's such a cliche, but it's so true. It's the most alive I've ever felt. And I knew I would go away having all the good memories. So I told myself, don't remember just the rose-tinted spectacles, remember the whole thing in case you're tempted to come back. We had to learn how to deal with it. And yeah, like you said, the going to touristy areas was the coping mechanism that we learned. But yeah, I mean, the riding, our rule anywhere is mostly we park up in the city and explore on foot, because city traffic to me is never enjoyable. You never get anywhere. And yeah, it's just too dangerous. So in New Delhi, we did ride. We had to, because that's where we bought the motorcycles and that's where we had to sell them again. So riding out, we had to get them from the Carroll Bar area, the motorcycle market, to the hostel. And to be honest, that was such madness. I don't even remember. The only thing I remember is traffic so close that I literally, every time I put my foot down, I had a tuk-tuk wheel standing on it or something.
Yeah, that's right.
And I had to squeeze so close behind Aiden so nobody could squeeze in and I wouldn't lose him. I had to literally run into him all the time, and he got really annoyed, but that was the only way. But yeah, like then leaving New Delhi, we made sure we left very early in the morning. And the funny thing then is, the thing we didn't anticipate is that's when all the cows are in the road, because that's when everybody feeds the cows in the middle of the road for no reason whatsoever in the middle of the road, but that's where it's done.
I had a great cow story in New Delhi. I was asking a local guy, and I said, so So what happens if you hit a cow? Of course, cows are sacred. He said, no, 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 don't hit a cow. I said, no, 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 I know, I'm not going to try to hit a cow. But what would happen? He just kept saying, don't hit a cow. And the bizarre thing is, you'll be, as you know this, and for those who haven't been to India, you'll be in a roundabout, and there'll be, I don't know, 200 vehicles in this dirt roundabout, and guys on bicycles, and and a family of 4 on a motorcycle with a newborn, so make that 5.
Yeah.
And then there's a cow lying in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And the cow, everybody just goes around the cow like it's standard procedure.
Yeah, they will run into each other happier than like, don't touch the cow. No,
Don't touch
for
the
sure.
cow.
Yeah, no, you do squish each other out of the way just to get around the cow. Well, the cow is plural, really.
Tell me about some of your goals for further travel. Is there anything on the horizon, the near horizon, and do you have an ultimate travel goal, or do you even think of it that way?
The dreaded question. You come back and everybody asks, so where
What's
to next? And
next?
you're
Where
like,
to next?
I'm
Yeah.
broke. I'm not going anywhere soon. Yeah, that really is the reality. Our finances are rather depleted after all our travels. There is no house to buy or sell or anything like that. So immediate plans are really the immediate vicinity. My dream would be to ride the Silk Roads, the Karakoram Highway. And I think for Aiden as well, we almost did the Mongol Rally before we set off to Argentina, but then a certain clown in Russia put an end to that. But yeah, it was, I think the stance, because we missed it the first time around. So we never made it to Shanghai. We had motorcycle travels, a lot of motorcycle troubles, and turned around from Georgia because we knew there was just not going to be any BMW parts once you hit the stands. And so, yeah, and by the time we had sorted all of that out, we didn't have the money to ride through there again. So it's like the big miss, the one that we missed, the one that got away. And I don't know, like, sure, a beach is nice, but mountains, riding through mountains is just, for me, amazing. So the Karakoram Highway and that, I think, if I ever scrape the cash together, that's what I'll be doing. That's where you find me.
This message comes from eBay. The worst part about loving cars might just be buying them and all the parts. From Toyotas to Aston Martins, eBay has thousands of cars and the largest online selection of vehicle parts and accessories. eBay, things people love. Well, this is the product review for this week's podcast. And continuing on with the ethos of giving you news you can use, I'm going to review a boot that you can't buy. But bear with me for a moment. So this is the Aerostitch Combat Light boot from our good friend in Minnesota, Andy Goldfein. Andy, our heart goes out to you during these troublesome times. And this boot is on the website, but it's an NLA because they can't get anyone to make it. And it's a shame because it's my favorite kind of boot. It's more robust than a regular street boot, so perfect for the kind of riding most of us do, ADV guys. And yet it's not a motocross boot, which looks ridiculous. And if you're traveling, you don't really want to get somewhere at the end of the day and have to take off motocross boots. And then you have to carry an extra pair of shoes, which is really troublesome. So while they don't have this, the closest thing you can find, because these are made by CD, SIDI, CD has a Trail 02 boot for $360. But as Aerostitch points out on their website, others have made a boot like this, but of course it's more complicated. And CD's boot has some really ugly branding, which is really unnecessary. Like, isn't it enough that we're paying for it? Do we really need to have an ADV thing across? I'm paid to wear this. Anyway, so check it out, CD Trail 02 boot. And if anyone actually has that boot and has feelings about it, either yay or nay, please reach out and let me know. But until then, if you'd like a boot like this, which aside from the blood that it drew from my ankle the first week that I wore it, is these are 20 years old and I love them. And they're waterproof. At least I've never been able to get wet feet, although I've tried. given my riding. I've tried. So reach out to Aerostitch and let them know if you'd like a pair of these, and maybe they'll redouble their efforts to find a supplier to make them, because they are the perfect combination for the kind of riding a lot of us do. The cars you'll find on eBay are just different. They come with a story that you can't wait to share. Like this 1973 Dodge Charger on eBay that had been tucked away in an Arizona barn for over 40 years. Only 55,000 miles. And somehow in great running order. It even has a rare sunroof. Suddenly, a car that was hidden for decades is being delivered in just a few clicks with eBay's secure purchase. All the paperwork handled. There are thousands of cars on eBay, from unique finds, like the Pontiac Grand Prix SJ, to daily drivers, and now with a new way to buy them. eBay, things people love. Thank you for listening to the Lowdown Radio Show.